Okay, so like, yo, has this ever happened in Weekly Shonen Jump? Personally, I feel like I've never really heard of something like this, and if I have, it wasn't significant enough for me to really be going a little bit excited at the very least to hear something like this is even possible when it comes to new manga, and in particular from Weekly Shonen Jump, the powerhouse that brings you all of some of the biggest stories of all time, whether it be from the Naruto, One Pieces, and Bleaches, to the My Hero Academia's, Black Clover's, Jujutsu Kaisen's, to of course some of the newer titles in general. It's just rare that you ever hear a situation like this where Weekly Shonen Jump actually decides to take a second look as far as the fate of a new franchise and the fate of a new series in general's potential. Because for the most part, when it comes to Weekly Shonen Jump, they're usually ready and able and more so willing to end a series, cancel a series, finish a series when it feels like there's no potential, and usually they will do it very early on so that way they don't go too long with a series and allow it to build something that they don't feel will, have massive impact. But it seems as though Weekly Shonen Jump, at the very least with this particular case, has decided to allow a series to grow and change their mind entirely, because apparently Weekly Shonen Jump had a series that they pretty much had already behind the scenes said, yo, it's done, it's canceled, it's over with, we're ending it very early on. Like literally within the first 15 or so chapters, they were ready to end this thing, but they decided to take a second look as far as, again, valuing the potential that the series has as far as to have impact and as far as to be a success. Because according to this, Ultimate Exorcist Kiyoshi by Shoichi Usui was scheduled to be cancelled by chapter 15 of the series, but the decision was ultimately reversed. This initially caused certain character concepts and settings to be discarded, but later recovered and presented into the series. And so you gotta think, wait a minute, if they had decided that by chapter 15 it was going to be over with, that means that like within the first dozen or so of chapters, they were ready to end this thing. They were ready to make sure that it goes away and that they were going to move on to something else, because historically that's what Weekly Shonen Jump does. We've seen it time and time again, whether it goes back to the days of the author of Black Clover, Yuki Tabata's first series. Before Black Clover, Hungry Joker, it was what, 24 chapters? Gone. Barrage, the original series before My Hero Academia by Kohei Horikoshi, 16 chapters. Gone. So Shonen Jump has no qualms whatsoever about ending a series, and we've seen historically almost all the time when a series early on isn't performing to their expectations, they get it out of the magazine. Whether people are fans of it or not, they're usually like ready to, discard of anything. But for them to make this decision, I feel like there's a few variables that they considered before they actually decided to reverse this thing. Because just being honest with you, I'm shocked that they even did this. I really don't remember a time where we've heard, I mean, this possibly happened, but normally they keep these things under wraps. I want to say that this was possibly an editor that decided to, share some details, divulge some information about things. I think it also allows for the fandom and the people in general that are supporters of the magazine and select series to take a look and be like, yo, if you want your series to succeed, if you want your series to see levels of success that you're hoping for, and you want it to go on to get the big anime adaptation, then definitely show some love or show some support. And with this series in particular, I remember very vividly early on that sales for this series weren't the greatest thing in the world. It wasn't like, jumping off the page, so to speak, especially in comparison to some of its contemporaries that are going on in the magazine right now. Like the higher up successes of the new or this next generation, they're doing like, 100,000 in like a week and some change. They're doing 80 something thousand in a week and some change. Kiyoshi very much so is doing like in the, I want to say 10 to 15 in the first week or so. So they're not doing the highest amounts of numbers or anything. So this gotta mean a couple of different things. One, I think Weekly Shonen Jump does understand that they're in a different situation now. This is not some of the previous days where whether it be that new generation that came in around like the 2020s where everything was just doing astronomical numbers, unbelievable. It was like, yo, how is series selling this much? We're not in that generation anymore, and most of, if not all of that generation has already come to an end. Jujutsu Kaisen gone. Demon Slayer, you got the anime, but but the manga, gone. Black Clover just finished its run. My Hero Academia, like, we already seen most of those juggernauts come to an end. So I do think that Weekly Shonen Jump is looking at the future of like, well, what are we gonna have that is actually even going to go on to be veteran series? Is everything just going to be rookies and then gone? You gotta allow for some series to cook. So I do believe that they looked at it as, well, for starters, hey, let's just see if we could get some stuff to last longer, even if it's not initially performing to expectations. I do think another reason is possibly out of respect. I do think that the art style of this series, like, it just has a little bit of that swag, so to speak, a little bit of that pizzazz, however you want to call it, that allows for a Weekly Shonen Jump to be like, yo, but the art is pretty dope. You know what I'm saying? The art actually has a little bit of that Bleach type of feel, I guess you would say, as far as the serious nature. I do think that it has like a cool art style, so to speak, and I mean that very sincerely. It has a cool art style. And then I think even more so, they also looking at things as like, yo, okay, maybe it didn't perform in that first batch of chapters to, you know, what we would like. The first volume probably didn't perform well. It wasn't a major success or anything like that. But I do think they're looking at it as, well, the appeal to a global demographic might be the key to actually making this thing happen. And how do you get to that? You gotta allow the series to cook to reach its anime adaptation, because this series in particular, from what was seen, read about, I don't know, maybe like handful or so chapters, a little bit more, and it kind of feels like a series that if it reaches its potential and it reaches certain demographics and certain audiences, it might actually be able to generate massive amounts of revenue and actually be a success. It's kind of like if you was to take OG Dragon Ball, or, you know, early One Piece, or those series that started off kind of slow, a little bit, not jumping off the pages with everything, and allowed them to cook. Even now, well, you would get a Dragon Ball Z, or you would get, you know, what One Piece ultimately became. And maybe that's somewhat of the mindset behind it, as well as, yo, it does have somewhat of an appeal that could actually generate, you know, some success down the road. Let's see what happens. Let's allow it to cook. And for them to reverse a decision, because it's not only that they just allowed this thing to continue on, they were 100% ready to get rid of this series. They were 100% ready to end it, and they changed their minds. So that's a very big deal that we're even privy to that type of information, and that just shows that maybe some people behind the scenes from Weekly Shonen Jump are starting to understand and starting to get with the idea and the times of, we're not in the same market anymore that we were back in the days where every series that could actually be successful is going to automatically out the gate be successful and sell quadrillions of volumes and everything like that. Sometimes some series, they need a little time to cook, and then ultimately they could possibly reach the potential. And I think that this is a great example and a great demonstration of giving other chances, as far as just, yo, see what this could bring to the table. And so we'll see what happens down the road, because the manga has already lasted, I want to say there's possibly, and I could be wrong, maybe like 80 something chapters or whatever. So the manga has already lasted quite a bit. I think it's already reached over a year, so it might be 60 to 80 chapters, somewhere in that ballpark. And this could very well be on its way to being up there once an anime adaptation comes through, because even now sales for it aren't the most craziest or anything like that. But I do believe that this is a showing that Shonen Jump actually seen some sort of potential in this thing and what it could be, and decided the old mindset of get it out of here if it's not an immediate hit is not the best all the time. Honestly, it's not the best most of the time, but that's a different story altogether. And I guess the best way to put it is Shonen Jump was like, you know what? Scratch that first thing of throwing it out the door. Let's see what it can do. Let's let it cook. So big ups to this series, big ups to its author, and most importantly, I want to give props to Weekly Shonen Jump. If we can criticize the higher ups and criticize all of their decisions, I do think it's important to give them actually props and respect when they make the decision that we feel is in the best interest of not only its publication, but some of its authors and some of these series that actually have some potential. So big ups to Weekly Shonen Jump, Shueisha, and whoever decided to make that decision to let this series stick around and see what could happen. Because at the end of the day, it would have been very easy to just replace it with something else, right? But who's to say what that something else is gonna be? And on top of that, it might have been somewhat of a case of maybe this series, while it didn't explode in sales, maybe it was performing better in a different market. Also, we don't know what the digital sales were, because I've actually already seen multiple examples of several different series that are actually selling sometimes more digitally. This is a first that I've actually started to notice because I've seen already a couple of different instances of the digital sales compared to the physical sales of some manga. And like I've seen, for example, like some of the top contenders in Weekly Shonen Jump currently that are doing in combination in their first week a lot more than what we're seeing. We're seeing a series, let's just say, do like 60 something thousand first week, 70 something thousand. When you add the digital, now it's at 120, 130, 140,000. So I think there's a possibility that maybe digital sales might be somewhat of a impact into this situation as well. So again, many different variables, but ultimately this is a good move on Weekly Shonen Jump's part, and I hope that they start doing this a little bit more often, or at the very least we hear more stories about this where it'll restore a little bit of faith, I guess you would say, in the higher ups and kind of their decision making, because most of us have already been like, yo, the higher ups, they're doing whatever. They're not paying attention to what the people want. They're not paying attention to how things can kind of maneuver or whatnot. And it seems as though somewhat, at the very least with an example like this, that they are, and maybe they're starting to change a little bit of their tune on how they're gonna maneuver. So definitely something to keep an eye on moving forward of what Weekly Shonen Jump does, because if they're deciding to move this way now, where they're not just immediately removing things for not, meeting requirements or whatnot, they might actually be changing, and this could be great for the magazine's future. So props to them. Moving forward, this is very, very big news, great news, and it's very interesting to see because we got the fiscal report for TV Tokyo's earnings. I believe this is from April of 25 to March of 26. So pretty much a year's worth of their fiscal reports. And if you don't know TV Tokyo, they're usually on this list. You'll see things like Bleach, you'll see things like Black Clover, things of that nature. But it seems as though this time around things have been a little bit different, and at the same time, gotta give props where they're due, because ultimately the top of this list is not necessarily surprising, but once again a testament to the staying power of some of these franchises. Because TV Tokyo's financial report for the fiscal full year ending March 2026, from April 1st to March 31st, the top titles are at number 5, Black Clover. Oh man, let's just quickly say, yo, despite the fact manga has finished its serialization, the final chapter has released. If you haven't seen it, go check out my review on that thing, because yeah, there was quite a bit to digest from what went down or whatnot. But Black Clover at number 5, despite no anime in quite some time. Obviously, the anime is, of course, returning here in the future. I want to say maybe October, we'll get the anime back, but it hasn't had an anime in a long time. It had a restricted amount of volumes that were released because of its quarterly release with Jump Giga. It went from, 3, 4, possibly 5 volumes in a year to like 1 or 2 volumes in a year for Black Clover. So very, very big difference. And ultimately, I'm not sure if manga sales actually equate to the revenue that's generated. And I think also the mobile game not that long ago actually had come to an end or something like that. So even with all of that, Black Clover is still a top 5 revenue generator. Who would have thought? Who would have knew? Then at number 4, which this is surprising, but again, this is from TV Tokyo's reports and what TV Tokyo generates. I doubt that this covers everything that this franchise brings in, because this franchise is like a global phenomenon and we all know it. And honestly, if it was like counting all revenue, it probably would, unanimously be number 1, Pokemon. And I do think, if I'm not mistaken, the anime just ended as well, the new anime with like the next generation kids or whatever. I guess I want to take the opportunity just to say like, yo dog, if they ever decided to do, even if it was just a film bringing back Ash, this would immediately go up. Or if they brought back a mini TV anime of Ash returning for a small adventure, or him as a master and what he's doing now, that would be up. Will they ever bring Ash back and have him as a full-on adult? Probably not, although I don't know why. Like, I get that they've had that motto of let's leave him universally, like, the eternal 10-year-old or whatever. If they brought back Ash as like, let's just say an adult in some form or another, and he's a Pokemon master, and he has to, face some sort of credible threat, whether it be, of course, like how they do with the legendaries, or if they was to do something where like he's facing this brand new league that was created because that makes him even more of a master, whatever the case may be. Ultimately, we would all be here for it. It would be the biggest thing in the world, and again, it would bring Pokemon all the way up. Because I mean, don't get me wrong, towards the end, one of the main reasons why they decided to go the way they went with Ash and switching him out and whatnot is because the Pokemon franchise wasn't doing what they wanted anymore. It was kind of not on the incline, so to speak, so they decided to switch things up. But a small series or a film centered around Ash again, I think the fans been waiting for that. I think the fans been wanting that, and I think that, again, the revenue that it would generate would make make TV Tokyo say, ah yes, more Ash. But that's just my thoughts on that, regardless of what Pokemon's still in there. And again, if they accounted all the revenue, Pokemon would probably be out of here. That's just my opinion. Then at number 3, Yu-Gi-Oh! Another one that I don't think Yu-Gi-Oh's had an anime for a bit now, and yet still performing at this level. I don't know if the trading card game has any impact on this or not, as far as, you know, the revenue that they're generating, or is it just like strictly, you know, certain merchandise or whatever. But Yu-Gi-Oh! Is still a big thing, and of course it's one of the big, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon have been unanimously, with Pokemon edging it out, the biggest franchise as far as like anime and manga goes for like merch, the video games, you know, all of that stuff. So it's not surprising to see them on here. However, while it's not surprising, it still feels surprising to see that the 2 top spots is Boruto at number 2 and Naruto at number 1, as, you know, TV Tokyo's financial report for the fiscal year, you know, their earnings and whatnot. Naruto and Boruto still being at the top. You know, say whatever you want, because it's always going to come up that, yo, it's because of Naruto that Boruto's in there. Boruto is the one that, you know, it's just facts, with the monthly releases, that is really bringing in a lot of the interest to this thing, you know, still keeping things going. I do believe that that mobile game that they have out there is probably one of the things that is really helping to generate more revenue for this whole thing. That's probably something of a factor of why both of them are up there, and that's probably keeping them and counting them together. I'm not sure the distinction between the two as far as how do they count the revenue or whatnot, but that mobile game got to be something that is in there, because again, there's no Naruto or Boruto. In fact, this list even brings me more to an intriguing factor. Almost none of these series have ongoing anime. I think Pokemon legit just wrapped its anime up, the latest one that they have with the kids. Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't think has an ongoing anime. Boruto anime is returning. Naruto anime, of course, been off air for a long time, and Black Clover doesn't have. So none of these things really have anime aside from, again, Pokemon. I'm not sure if they started something new or not. And somehow they're all still top 5. Imagine if they did all have ongoing anime right now, or at the very least, you know, the Boruto anime returned, Yu-Gi-Oh! Got a new one, Pokemon, this would be crazy. So it makes me wonder what is the factors and how are they calculating this thing. And regardless, it's just showing the staying power of the, you know, Naruto and Boruto whole conglomerate, so to speak. The Naruto franchise as a whole, like they just reported not that long ago that it was like the top thing on Netflix. Like, you can't get rid of these series even if you wanted to, because they have such strong fan bases. In TV Tokyo's holding reports record financial results, they brought in 164.9 billion yen revenue, operating profit 11.4, net profit 7.7. Anime and streaming were key growth drivers. Anime revenue hit a record 27.2 billion, so that's probably licensing deals. So even though they don't have ongoing current releasing new episodes, you know, them relicensing Naruto to Netflix, them relicensing Boruto to whether it be Crunchyroll or whatever the case may be, relicensing all of these franchises is probably where the anime revenue is being generated, you know, to different markets and whatnot. Naruto and Boruto boosted global game plus merch sales. Okay, so I was right on the global game being what is a driving factor. Black Clover performing strongly overseas. Makes sense. Black Clover, although we've seen when it came out, you know, those results years back, that like in almost every country the anime was one of the most watched things. So there's that. And streaming revenue rose as well. TV Tokyo also announced a 4.5 salary increase for younger employees in 26, with new graduates starting salaries rising to 330 million a month, about 2,000 euros. Basically, the younger kids are getting more money nowadays, so kudos to them. It's just insane too, because Black Clover's anime returns soon, Boruto probably following that. What is that going to account in the end? I think Black Clover might rise. Despite the manga coming to an end with the anime's return, Black Clover might at the very least hit number 3 on this list. Also, something to note, not in a disparaging manner, just speaking what I'm seeing, Bleach not on this one. And I want to say in the last report that we got from TV Tokyo, Bleach was in the top 5. Kind of interesting. I think Bleach is a little bit of a different scenario. I've always heard rumors, and I'm not sure how credible this is, so we'll just say it's rumors, that Bleach has many different licensing ties with like several different conglomerates. Like, I want to say for a long time, the reason why there wasn't a new Bleach game was because like Sega had some stuff. Again, we'll keep that in the rumor pile, but I do think that one is credible about the Sega situation or whatnot. So that's why Bleach didn't have that. And I do think that because of, again, those circumstances, Bleach's revenue, while, you know, it'll generate a massive amount, ultimately the profit that is seen is not going to be as substantial as some of the other ones. It could be that Bleach, you know, early on, you know, the structuring wasn't right or whatnot, but I do think that that's why, because honestly, Bleach, even now, people are eagerly anticipating the return of the, you know, the final season or whatever, the final saga or whatnot. So why wouldn't Bleach still be up there? And when the Bleach anime returns, I do think merch is going to go up, video games are going to go up, all sorts of stuff. So kudos to Bleach. But yeah, interesting that it's not on the list this time. Again, Black Clover, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Boruto, Naruto, but shout outs to all the series. Okay, so this one was actually a pretty interesting story regarding, again, Shonen Jump. Shonen Jump been in the news a lot lately, right? Basically, Shonen Jump recently announced certain aspects of why certain manga, despite them getting, you know, let's just say a win here or there, don't get the full-on serialized treatment where, you know, they get to be in front of the spotlight or whatnot. And it says here, Shonen Jump on why manga award winners never get serialized. Winning an award means you have talent and potential. It does not mean you're ready to create a hit series yet. They go on to say that creators who improve are the ones who can accept criticism, refine their work, and balance originality with commercial appeal. To be deeply loved by some people, a work needs flavor, even if that means being disliked by others. And I will say that that is a major factor that not only with, like, you know, aspiring manga creators, I think, you know, people in general, there's a certain aspect where you cannot please everybody. Like, that's the truth of the matter. As much as you want to, as much as you want to be loved by everybody, as much as you know, you just, let's just say you don't want problems with anybody in general, you don't want to ruffle any feathers or whatnot, ultimately, you're going to. Like, that's just how it's going to be. So why not make what you make, do what you do it to the best of your capability, do it while also making sure to take care of yourself. And if you're disliked by others, you're disliked by others. There's nothing you can do about it other than to keep being the best version of yourself. So I think that that's some great advice. Honestly, yo, hold on. Shonen Jump, this episode of Forever News, I gotta give them props on a few different aspects. Like, they basically said, like, yo, be yourself, do your best work, and if other people hate you, so what? That's also, again, an eye-opening thing for aspiring creatives of, even if you get a small W here, or, you know, you get to enter a competition or whatnot, it does not mean you're gonna be on the big stage with, you know, the big dogs just yet. You gotta keep on going, you gotta persevere. Be original with things, which I know there's no idea that is original under the sun. I totally get that aspect, but if you can, differentiate your work from everybody else and see what happens. You never know what could pop off. And again, don't worry if other people don't like you. That's just the inevitable. There's nothing you could do about it. And trying to chase after certain demographics or certain audiences, like begging them or you know, changing your style to please like me, that's not gonna work. Focus on yourself and doing great. But yeah, that's all I have for this one. I'm Tim. As always, people, have an awesome day. You just watched another episode of Forever News. Peace in.
I don't care what they talking about. They can keep the doubt. Man, they can't figure me out.